Okay, let's start this deep dive with, well, some really stark facts. We're talking about the deaths of at least 12 children across Madhya Pradesh and Rajasthan.
Yeah, it's truly devastating. All linked to acute kidney failure after they'd taken cough syrups.
And this started back in late August, right? First in Chhindwara in MP, 9 children there.
That's right. And then 3 more deaths followed in Rajasthan. The pattern was frighteningly similar.
Cold, maybe a fever, then this incredibly rapid decline. Reduced urine output, kidney complications. Just awful.
It is. And, our mission today is really to unpack this. The crisis itself, the initial fears about what causes specifically contamination, and then the surprising turn in the investigation.
And crucially, what this teaches us about medication safety for kids, which feels like a global issue.
Absolutely. So that initial fear you mentioned, when you hear kids, kidney failure, and liquid medicine in the same sentence, everyone's mind jumps to one thing.
Contamination. Specifically diethylene glycol, DEG, or ethylene glycol, EG.
Exactly. These aren't things that should ever be in medicine. They're industrial chemicals, sometimes used illegally as cheap substitutes for safer solvents in pharmaceuticals.
And the suspicion was totally justified, wasn't it? Because of recent history.
Absolutely justified. The gut reaction was informed by tragedy. Remember 2022? Over 60 children died in the Gambia.
Right, from contaminated cough syrups made in India, and there were other cases too. Uzbekistan, Cameroon, WHO alerts went out.
Precisely. And even more recently, reports surfaced about, 128 Indian export syrups failing quality tests. Some had EG levels like 22 times the safe limit.
Okay, so explain what these chemicals, DEG and EG, actually do. Why are they so lethal, especially for children?
Well, once ingested, the body, specifically the liver, metabolizes them into these highly toxic compounds. These then form basically sharp calcium oxalate crystals in the kidneys.
Crystals, like tiny shards.
Essentially, yes. They cause massive physical damage, leading to acute kidney failure. And because children have smaller body weights, even minuscule amounts can be fatal. They're incredibly vulnerable.
Which brings us to the major twist in this specific story, because everyone expected to find DEG or EG.
And they didn't. That's the central mystery here. The Union Health Ministry, the state authorities, they ran the lab tests on the syrups, collected brands like Coldrif, Nextro DS, one from Cason's Pharma.
And the results?
0 traces of DEG or EG, none. So the initial most terrifying explanation, the manufacturing contamination with these specific toxins, was ruled out for these cases.
Wow. Okay, so if it wasn't DEG contamination in these syrups, where does the investigation go next?
Well, it immediately throws the spotlight onto other potential issues. They're looking into things like, the water sources in the affected areas, testing for other pathogens.
I read one child tested positive for leptospirosis.
That's right, which complicates the picture, though it doesn't explain the cluster across different regions. But the really significant finding, I think, points towards a different kind of failure.
Which is?
It's about the prescribing and distribution practices. One of the key syrups implicated, particularly in the Rajasthan cases, contained dextromethorphan.
Dextromethorphan? That sounds familiar. Isn't that in a lot of common cough medicines?
It is. It's a common cough suppressant. Yeah. But here's the critical part. Dextromethorphan-based syrups are explicitly not recommended for pediatric use, especially in very young children.
Not recommended. Why not?
Because the risks can outweigh the benefits, particularly for kids under, say, 6 and definitely under 2. Viral coughs usually resolve on their own. But dextromethorphan can cause serious side effects in young children, things like seizures, confusion, dangerously slowed breathing, respiratory depression.
And yet these syrups were being given out.
Yes, reportedly distributed through government health centers.
Yeah.
So even if the batches tested were free of DEG, you have a situation where a medication considered inappropriate and potentially risky for young children was administered through official channels.
That shifts the focus from just a potential manufacturing error to a systemic issue in healthcare delivery, a gap in practice or policy.
Exactly. It highlights a potential breakdown in ensuring appropriate medications are given to the right patient populations. Provider education, administrative oversight, these come into question.
So this tragedy serves as a harsh reminder, even without that initially suspected contamination.
Absolutely. And it brings us to the vital lesson for everyone listening, especially parents. There's a very clear medical consensus on this.
Which is what? What's the guidance?
The major health bodies, the US FDA, the American Academy of Pediatrics, the WHO, they all strongly advise against using over-the-counter cough and cold medicines for children under 2.
And even for older kids?
They generally discourage them for children under 6. The reasoning is simple. Limited evidence they actually help much with simple viral coughs, but a clear risk of serious side effects.
So what should parents do?
The basics, really. Keep the child hydrated, encourage rest, maybe use a humidifier. Simple supportive care is often the safest and most effective approach for a standard cold or cough. Always consult a doctor if you're worried.
Okay, so wrapping this up. This deep dive started looking like another tragic case of industrial contamination.
But turned into something potentially more complex. While investigators still need the definitive cause, maybe it's multifactorial. The immediate actionable takeaway isn't just about factory checks.
It's also about the systems in place for prescribing and administering medicines, especially to vulnerable children.
Precisely. It underscores this dual need for vigilance. Yes, we absolutely need robust oversight of pharmaceutical manufacturing, given the past failures and the recent quality issues. That's non-negotiable.
But there's another layer.
Yes. There also needs to be rigorous adherence to clinical guidelines within the healthcare system itself, ensuring that potentially harmful or inappropriate drugs, like dextromethorphan for infants, aren't reaching them through official channels.
So the final thought for you, the listener, is really about that dual responsibility. We need safe manufacturing, of course, but also informed choices both from healthcare providers following evidence-based guidelines and from parents seeking appropriate care rather than reaching for potentially risky OTC remedies for young children.
It's about protecting kids at every single step.